Hello again and welcome to the video. In this one I will be continuing my look at every Grand Prix in the 2025 Formula One World Championship. Just a simple look from a fan's perspective, long time fan that I have been for decades, since the early 80s. So what formula do I employ for the video? Well, as usual, it'll be a rundown of the finishing positions, then top 10 in the Drivers' Championship, and then the rundown of the Constructors' Championship, which I will write down here on this piece of paper. And then after that, I will just have a little chat about what I thought happened in the race, how I think the championship is going, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's start. It was, of course, round 6. Miami Grand Prix. Back in the 80s, when we used to have, in the early to mid 80s, when we used to have numerous American Grand Prix, they were all called the USA Grand Prix, but you would have the USA Grand Prix, the USA West Grand Prix, and the USA East Grand Prix. This one would probably be the USA South Grand Prix, if this was the early 80s. But nowadays, we're allowed to name Grand Prix after the cities that they are in, or the regions, as in Emilia-Romagna. Okay, let's go. Piastri now, is that in focus? It's always important for me to get in focus. Yeah, I'd like to think that's in focus. Okay. Norris. Russell. Apologies for the pen for anyone who doesn't like it, but I haven't got an alternative yet. Not one that looks as good anyway. Verstappen in 4th, wasn't it? Albon. Antonelli. Leclerc. Hamilton. Sainz. Tsunoda. Hadjar. Ocon. Gasly. Hulkenberg. Alonso. Stroll. Lawson. Bortoleto. Bearman and Doohan. So those ones there were retirees. Okay, championship. Piastri with 131. Second is Norris on 1-1. That's why I just disappeared off just quickly like that. You might have noticed, I don't know, but I had a little pause there. It was because I suddenly realised, my little pause there was because I suddenly realised that I hadn't double checked today that the results hadn't changed at all. You know how these things can happen. And they haven't, so that's okay. Every time I pause, this pen, which could do with replacing, I guess, keeps dries out in seconds. Russell, 93 points. 5th place. It's Leclerc on 53. 6. Antonelli, 48. 7th. And his eternal 7th place. Hamilton, 41. 8th. Albon on 30. Ocon, 14. And Stroll on 14. Okay, constructors. McLaren, 246. Mercedes, 141. Oh dear, this pen actually is on the way out. But unfortunately for everyone who doesn't like this pen, unfortunately I do have quite a lot of these pens. But we'll see on the pen front. 105 for Red Bull. Ferrari with 94, not that far behind, surprisingly. Williams, 37. 6th is Haas, 20. 7th. Aston Martin on 14. 8th. Racing Bulls on 8. 9th. Alpine on 7. 10th. Sauber on 6. Okay. I like to think that is still all in focus. There we go. Check it. I've checked it. Okay, so what did we think about that race? As you can see, I'm using a slightly different location to normal as well to record this video. That adds in its own complications. Right, so fastest lap for starters, Norris. So, on pole position, Verstappen, fantastic, just like in Japan. Clearly the Red Bull is not as good as the McLaren, probably not as good as the Mercedes either. But Verstappen is able to do his usual supreme one-lap qualifying and also supreme defence as well to poor old Norris. Anyway, let's just talk about the sprint race because it was a sprint race first. I don't normally discuss the sprint races, but it was quite an exciting sprint race. just a few things to mention there. Piastri on Antonelli at the start. Antonelli was a little bit upset, but it was clear that Piastri had, going by these new Apex rules, Piastri had the corner on the first corner, and Antonelli did a bit of a Norris, basically, and messed it up a little bit. But, yeah, Piastri definitely had the corner, so there's no problem there. The pit lane incident, Antonelli and Max Verstappen. Dear oh dear. Now, Jonathan Wheatley that was one of his areas, the pit lane. And since he's gone, certain jobs of his have been spread amongst other people, and one of them is the pit lane, the pit stops, basically. And there have been a few incidents recently, different, as Max Verstappen pointed out, different incidents. In other words, there's not just one problem. And this was just the latest. And this was a terrible one, straight into Antonelli, who didn't do what I would expect most drivers to do. He didn't continue to try and get into his pit box. He would have probably been spun around and would have collected part of his team with the rear of the car, probably, if he had continued to try to turn in to the pit box. But he didn't. He immediately went straight back out again, instinctive. That was obviously not an order from the team. The team wouldn't have been quick enough to respond there. That was all down to Antonelli. So that was a very good get out by Antonelli there. Messed up his race. And I think he ended up about 11th, something like that. Hamilton was 3rd. Yes, it's worth mentioning, but I mean, he was only 3rd because of the team strategy. They brought him in just at the right time. And of course, Verstappen had a penalty, although I think Verstappen was behind Hamilton by then. But yeah, it was all down to it wasn't down to fantastic driving by Hamilton. It was down to the strategy of his team. Norris lucky with the win. Yes, in a way he was lucky with the win, of course, because the safety car coming out when it did, it was supposed to hamper Norris badly because both McLarens were coming in at the same time, so they were going to have to... sorry, they weren't coming at the same time. They were coming in one lap apart, weren't they? For the dry tyres, Piastri was coming in first because he was ahead, and then it was going to be Norris coming in afterwards. However, by the time Norris came in 1 lap later, Alonso had his big accident, and the virtual safety car was out, slowing up the field, and he was able to come out and retain the lead after not retain the lead, get the lead off Piastri. But yes, it was lucky how it got ahead of him. He was lucky with the safety car, but he was all over Piastri just before the pit stops. He was monstering the rear end of Piastri. He had closed right up on him. Norris doing what he normally does. He's normally very quick in the latter part of a tyre stint. And he was right all over Piastri. So without those pit stops, he may well have got past anyway. So he was helped by the safety car, but I think he would have got past anyway to win that race. Terrible for the Williams. Both Williams failing to score points. Albon was in 5th or 6th place, and then he had a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And Sainz had his crash where he just clipped at that. But I forget the name of the turn, but he clipped the inside barrier, didn't he? Going through that squiggly section. I forget what it's called. The squiggly section, we'll call it. Right, so in the actual race, oh dear, Norris versus Verstappen. We knew it was going to happen, didn't we? Norris versus Verstappen. Why, oh why, does Norris always try to overtake around the outside? I've said it in previous videos and I'll say it again. Why does he always attempt to overtake Max around the outside? Max can always just slowly push him off. Most of the time in a legal way, sometimes not. Like last year, there was a lot of aggressive, illegal stuff going on. But this year, it was legal because he did have the apex. The apex rules are so complicated, aren't they? But let's see if I can get this out correctly. So they went into the first corner, but because there were two corners closely connected to each other, the apex rule is not taken by the first corner, it's taken by the second corner, turn 2. And if Norris had been overtaking on the inside, he would have only had to have got his front wheels alongside the mirror of Max to be able to claim the corner. Of course, whether or not Max would go, oh yes, I recognise your claim to the corner, Norris. There you go. I don't think he would. But anyway, going by the rules, he would have been able to claim the corner. But of course, he was then on the outside at turn 2. He was on the outside of the corner. He was on the outside, wasn't he? Yeah, he was on the outside of the corner, wasn't he? And because he was on the outside of the corner, you have to be fully alongside in order to be able to claim the corner. And he was nearly fully alongside, but not quite. It was judged that Max was sort of centimetres in front at the apex. And then Max had his little oversteer slide, which didn't look deliberate at all to me. And I don't think Max would do something so obvious like that jink to the right. But that did push Norris basically off the track. But I think that was totally accidental by Max. That's why there was no penalty to Max, because he was slightly ahead by centimetres at the apex. Has to be wheel to wheel if you are overtaking on the outside. If you are overtaking on the inside, your wheels just have to be alongside the mirrors of the car you're overtaking. It's all of this at the precise apex of the corner. I don't know how drivers are supposed to measure this in the heat of the moment. You know, it can be measured accurately looking at camera footage for ages afterwards, but at the time, I don't know how they're supposed to know what, you know, I don't know how they're supposed to judge it. But yeah, Norris is super fast, but he's just not good with the wheel-to-wheel racing, particularly with Max. Maybe he's got a little hang-up over Max. They're friends. And after last year, I think he's the bogeyman for Norris. I mean, he is for a lot of the drivers, but particularly for Norris. Piastri doesn't seem to show the same sort of fear that Norris does when it comes to Verstappen. But we know that Norris's main weakness over the last 2 years have been qualifying and overtaking, particularly overtaking Max. Or his qualifying in this race was all right. He qualified ahead of Piastri. It just didn't click for Piastri, the third quali session. Piastri had been faster in the second quali session, but not the third. So Norris got the quali sorted. But unfortunately then made the overtaking manoeuvre that didn't work. And that knocked him down to 6th place. And then what he does is he then drives super fast. I mean, he got the fastest lap. He then drives incredibly well. He chopped past the 2 Mercedes. Yes, Russell was on hard tyres, making it easier. And Antonelli is 18. So, but still, he had to get past both of those two. And that's after getting past Albon as well. And who else did he get past? And of course, he did get past Verstappen as well. Eventually. But Piastri, he took a while getting past Max, but in the end he sort of forced Max into a mistake. We thought maybe Lando would be able to do the same thing, but Max was wise to it by then. I think it was into the first corner, wasn't it? Piastri jinked to the outside to get past Max. Max defended and then he outbraked himself. But of course, he's not going to do that a second time when Lando came along to overtake him. And Lando was only about 2 seconds behind the pair of them when Piastri got past Verstappen. By the time Lando got past Verstappen, Piastri was 10 seconds up the road. Norris closed and closed and closed. We had a virtual safety car, but Norris was catching Piastri just like he does. And once everything's settled down, once they're all up to speed, once they're well into a race stint, like halfway through a tyre stint, then Norris comes alive and goes faster and faster, and is faster than Piastri, always has been. Particularly so last year, less so. Piastri is a lot closer in race pace this year. But Norris is still has the edge on race pace at the towards the sort of like in the second half of tyre stints. At the beginning of a tyre stint or at the beginning of the race, I would say Piastri is the quickest. But not later on once they've picked up speed. I said that all throughout last year. Norris was very, very slow. I think I could get 0 to 60 faster than Norris. But once he's up to speed, he's very, very, very quick. Another thing with Norris is he doesn't appear feisty enough, angry enough on the track. I remember Mansell. If he was overtaken or if something happened to him, like in Mexico 1990, when he spun off the track, it was all his own fault, but he got so annoyed with himself that he came charging back at breakneck speed and overtook Gerhard Berger around the Peraltada, even though Mansell was on worn-out tyres and Berger in his McLaren was on fresh tyres. And Mansell just blew around the outside of him around a corner where you are not supposed to overtake around the corner. It's a deadly corner, that was. It has since been changed at the Mexican circuit. And the new corner that's there, the sort of safer corner, is called the Mansell Curve, I believe it's called. It's named after Nigel Mansell anyway, because of 1990. When he got fired up, he was unstoppable. Norris, he got a little bit fired up in this race. After going down to 6th place, he was definitely driving quicker than anybody else, including Piastri. Mind you, Piastri was close up behind Verstappen. So, yeah, you could argue that's why he was quicker than Piastri. But Norris cut his way through the field, back up to eventually 2nd place. But it's still, I don't know, it feels, even when he's being fired up like that, it still feels like Norris is pretending to be fired up, like, oh, look at me, I'm so angry and feisty, I'm just like Max. And it just comes across like he's trying to look like he's aggressive when he isn't. Neither is Piastri, has to be said. The big thing that Norris has going for him is his speed. I still think that he is faster than Piastri. I still think that Norris is going to win the championship this year, despite Piastri now having won 4 races to Norris's 1 and Verstappen's 1. If you look at the championship positions, then you would think, oh, it's neck and neck with these two only just behind. But if you looked at the wins, just the wins, you would think that Piastri was dominating. And, of course, you could argue that Piastri deserves a bigger gap in points. It's all because of Australia, really, but he does deserve a bigger gap in points, seeing as he's won 4 of the 6 races so far. But, yeah, you look at that, that's frightening. 4 wins out of 6, that's not good reading for Norris. But the actual championship points, that's nothing. 16 points is nothing. So it's 5 wins for McLaren so far, 1 for Red Bull. But see, Norris had the fastest lap in this race, not Piastri. So Norris just has to avoid Max and qualify well, and he qualified well in this race. If he's on a 1-to-1 with Piastri, I think he'll beat him. because he only finished about 4 seconds behind Piastri in the end. Was Piastri massaging? I thought he was, but then it was revealed in commentary that the team were actually advising Piastri where Norris was going quicker. They were telling Piastri to speed up. His side of the pit garage, anyway, was telling Piastri to speed up and giving him tidbits of information and saying, oh, this is where Norris is going quicker, things like that. So Piastri was clearly trying to stay further ahead. After the race, Piastri said he was struggling a little bit towards the end of the stint. I think it's more a case of just Norris always being very, very quick in the second half of a tyre stint. Quicker than anybody in the second half of a tyre stint. He just needs to sort out his overtaking choices. Stop trying to overtake people around the outside. Right, this video has pretty much all been about Norris Piastri, hasn't it? With a bit of Verstappen. But that's what I wanted to talk about mainly. Hamilton versus Leclerc. That was quite interesting, all the swapping positions. Hamilton's radio messages to the team, because it did take Ferrari about 3 laps to ask Leclerc to let Hamilton through. As soon as they did, Leclerc immediately moved over and let Hamilton through. And Hamilton had said, oh, you know, have a tea break if you want. If you want to have a tea break before making the decision, you can do. Hamilton was critical of the team there, not Leclerc. And then, of course, once Hamilton was past Leclerc, he was no longer in Leclerc's DRS, and also his medium tyres were starting to drift then. He had used up the best of his medium tyres that he was on, and he'd been stuck behind Leclerc for 3 laps. So then Leclerc on his hard tyres was then able to go quicker than Hamilton. And so then it was Leclerc saying, oh, we should swap positions. So then Hamilton was asked to let Leclerc through, which he apparently did straight away. It looked like he didn't, but that's only because the team initially told Leclerc we're going to swap positions, but they forgot to say that to Hamilton. And then the following lap they asked Hamilton, and he did swap. So the drivers were polite about it with their swapping. And then it was pointed out to Hamilton that Sainz was getting close behind him. So Hamilton said, oh, do you want me to let him past as well? Which is funny, but a bit unnecessary, because why wouldn't the team ask him to let Leclerc past when Leclerc, by that stage, was quicker than Hamilton? But then, of course, Hamilton was then stuck behind Leclerc then, because he had Leclerc's DRS. So they were just, it was just pointless swapping positions, basically, backwards and forwards. But I suppose they gave it a go to see if one of them could pull away from the other, but it didn't happen. Yeah, but I mean, Hamilton, he's saying all the same things that he's been saying the last 3 years at Mercedes. We're not quite there, or we're nowhere there, nowhere near. Coming home in, 6th, 7th position, picking up the odd 3rd place every now and again. It's exactly like Mercedes in 2022, 23 and 24. If anything worse, because I can't see any wins coming Hamilton's way. Maybe Leclerc, because he's slightly faster at the moment. On the last lap, of course, we had Ham versus Sainz. Hamilton versus Sainz. With Sainz trying to overtake Hamilton up the inside on like one of the last few corners. Hamilton turned in way early, but legally it seems like he was allowed to turn in at that time when he did. But yeah, looking at the comparisons to when he had turned in on other laps when he wasn't being attacked by someone, he turned in way early for the apex. And that reminds me of Prost, 1989 in Japan, where Prost turned in way early in order to wipe out Senna, who was trying to go up his inside for the lead of the race. And Prost turned in miles before the corner. And the same thing here for Hamilton. But Hamilton, it wasn't too early for him to be able to get around the corner. Unlike with Prost in 89, I don't think Prost would have got around the corner. But here Hamilton was still able to get around the corner, so it was considered an okay move. So, very good race. Fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing in Miami, especially that big bend. What's that that slow bend? I forget what it's called. But there's that big right-hand curve, or a big right-hand bend with the crowd. It's like an amphitheatre type look to it. And there's always fantastic overtaking. There was last year as well. Fantastic side-by-side racing through there somehow. They manage that every year. But it's great racing, fantastic racing, which is what you want in America, because we want the success of F1 to continue in the USA. Especially with the F1 film coming up soon. So what else did I want to say about the race, or about the other drivers? Albon, fantastic, in 5th. Could have got a similar result in the sprint. Stroll, he finished 5th in the sprint, didn't he? He had a good performance in the sprint. Alonso, no points again. Oh dear, oh dear. Hadjar, he had a good long fight with Hamilton for about half the race. Tsunoda, he had a penalty. Was that speeding in the pit lane? I think it was. Antonelli, yeah, he had a strong enough race. He'll be disappointed with that, of course. Only 6th place, despite 2 very good qualifying performances, pole position in the sprint and 3rd place on the grid in the Grand Prix. Fantastic qualifying. But there you go. The championship, yeah, still looks pretty much the same. No points for Alonso. That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. But it's amazing that Piastri 4 wins out of 6, and he's only got a slender lead in the championship. Strange that. McLaren, more than 100 points ahead of Mercedes. Anyway, so as I said earlier, my final thought is, yes, I do believe Norris will still win the championship. Piastri fans will laugh at that, and the evidence tends to suggest against that. But when you look at each individual race, I think they're on a par this year. Norris has always been faster the previous 2 years, but I think for speed they're on a par. But Norris does have this knack towards the end of a tyre stint of being faster than Piastri. So I think that just gives him the edge. His speed at the end of a tyre stint gives him the edge in out-and-out speed. But Piastri has been making less mistakes. The odd mistake in qualifying by Norris, the odd mistake in overtaking by Norris, that's enough to lose him the race. Piastri has not been making those same mistakes. In Australia, he went off, yes, but he was sort of following Norris off, and the track was wet. It caught them both out. And it wasn't Piastri's fault that he came off worse. It's just luck of the draw how you spin. So, yeah, Piastri has not been making mistakes. And that's why he's got 4 wins. Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so, or like the video, or comment on the video, or leave a tip underneath the video on the thanks button. And I will see you, hopefully, on the very next video. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.